I think showing a practical Christianity is really useful for helping kids, because kids these days are asking questions like, is this valuable? Like, is this even important in my life? Like, I don't have time to waste. There's so much information out there. Like, I just don't have the time to just do this just because you say, and I can't just go. And especially when kids are like, you guys don't actually understand anything about the world. You're old, you still use Facebook. Like, you're going to tell me about what I need to know about my life when I'm 14, 15, 16. But if they're seeing value in what you're doing, and you're like, guys, let's look at this situation let's take something nice and controversial. Everyone will prick the ears up. Mask mandates or vaccination, something that they're grappling with day to day in school, and be like, guys, what do you think about this? What do the scriptures say about this? How do we make this into something that our worldview, our faith can help us through, as opposed to just, the blind, here are the rules, and just keep walking and keep getting those stars.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. Today, we are joined by special guest Josh Ramsey of Be in Touch. Josh, thank you for being here.
It is so cool to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for you, excited for our conversation, but excited for people to get to meet you and hear more about what God's been doing in your life and what your work is. Josh is co-founder of Be in Touch, an organization based out of South Africa, focused on educating families about digital wellness. They do this through their website, beintouch.org, as well as online and live talks on topics that we want to see our children be most informed and healthful in: screen time, cyberbullying, social media, stranger danger, pornography, like the whole gamut. Do check out his website and you'll hear his heart and just the amazing mission that he is on. Josh, first and foremost, I want people to hear just kind of who Josh is, a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Absolutely. It's so great to be a part of your show today and to be connecting with a new audience for us. We're based in South Africa, as you said, and we're going to get into my story in a bit, I think, but I've got an early exposure to pornography story. So when I was 9 years old, came across that, and it kind of just sat in the dark. I didn't really know how to deal with it, developed some bad media compulsion and then substance compulsion. And so I've kind of walked down that road of landing up on my parents' couch at 28, depressed, anxious, can't get up, don't want to do anything. And so I'm just trying to help kids avoid that. And from the data that we see collected in the surveys we do in schools, we can just see this real pain that a lot of parents are not aware of. And so we try and facilitate parents to be in touch with their kids, and kids to be in touch with their problems, and everyone just to be a little bit more in touch with what it is to need help and need a hand up. And so I'm a family man. We've been through quite a journey to arrive at our family that we have. We tried for a couple of years and weren't able to start a family, and then we ended up adopting and adopted a little girl called Marley, and she's just 13 months old, and we just got that legally put through, finalized, which is very exciting. Hey. And my wife Kate Louise and I and Marley have a little home where I work from remotely in a little mountain village outside of Cape Town. Sorry, it's called Greyton. So that's some of the things that come to mind. There's obviously more that we can dig into on all of those, but
yeah, but that's awesome context. You mentioned, so the work you do, I want to start there, because you said you're doing these surveys, which is amazing. We don't have something like this that I'm aware of stateside specifically. Would you explain a little bit of what this work looks like?
Yeah, so the two problems that we try and help schools solve, the first one is that kids don't really take digital citizenship curriculum materials very seriously, at least in South Africa. They kind of check the boxes, they watch the videos, but there's no really like, you guys really get what I'm going through, and I can appreciate what you're telling us about here. And then the other one is that parents don't really know what's going on with their kids' digital lives. And so a lot of that responsibility falls on schools, and it kind of gets lost in the middle because schools are trying to do their thing with education, and parents are kind of expecting schools to do it. So the way we solve that is that we do a big vulnerability piece, which is my story, very open sharing of my life journey, these 4 chapters, where I was a golden boy in school. Then I kind of went into the wilderness, and I think that has some spiritual context as well. Chapter 2, chapter 3 is kind of seeking purpose. And chapter 4 is life on life's terms, starting a family. And I really just lay it all out there. We use some cool tech, anonymous chat, using polls and kind of word clouds that we build with the kids to really just build a relationship with the kids. And then I say, guys, okay, I've let it all hang out, my good, bad, and ugly of my life. So tell me what's going on with you guys. I know that in a group this size, someone's depressed, someone's addicted to porn, somebody's getting cyberbullied, somebody's got body image issues, somebody might even be cutting. So we get them to do this 40 to 50 item survey, really in depth on all of the topics you mentioned at the start: cyberbullying, sexting, pornography, vaping and alcohol, self-harm ideation. I don't know what I've left out. All of it not too fun, but
yeah.
And then they do. And I can't believe it every time, but they sit for 15, 20 minutes and they just pour their hearts out. And then we get these stats, which are all aligned with kind of, we've just brought in a technical advisor on the stats that we're gathering. And then we get these powerful statistics. And at least in South Africa, we are surveying more than even some of the kind of universities are surveying to get an idea of what's going on here. So last year we surveyed 1,500 kids, and this year we're already hitting about 300-400, and it's just the start of the year. So we're going on, and then those stats are used to activate the schools, empower the parents, and help regulators as well to just protect the kids.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're coming away with being able to engage kids on their level. I love what you say. So digital citizenship for parents and listeners who don't know, digital citizenship is that training, which is like don't go to these bad websites. Remember that you leave your footprint online.
Yeah. So it's your good footprint, your digital footprint. It's your good passwords are, device settings are, but it's generally, I mean, in South Africa, I've even seen it taught with like an A4 printout book.
Nice.
So like where the students are at and where the educators are at are just speaking different languages. And there are some kind of companies that are creating more exciting content, but it's expensive, and so we try and help our schools get free content,
I think that's powerful. And Google has, and I believe Amazon has a digital citizenship, but where they fall short. And what I love, what I'm hearing for what you're doing with kids is engaging the story, right? There's none of those trainings have execs, these big companies going, here's my struggle in life. So kids get that engagement. And then you're saying that this survey is a 15 to 20 minute relational connection. And you have 1,500 of those, well, almost 2,000 now. Those are, every one of those is a story. Every one of those is a journey. And then the school gets this, almost a report card, a temperature of like, here's where your grade levels are sick. Like, in your middle grades, like here's specifically your pinch points.
And what's super exciting about it is that, I have to wear the two hats. There's the guy that's offering a service and he's excited that the service is valuable. There's the dad who's horrified that the service is necessary. So when I say I'm excited, it just means that there's power in what we're doing. So in a school, we can say, listen, something happened in your grade 9s. Their pornography exposure levels are insane. The level of sending nudes or sexting in that grade are really high. The belief around how normal pornography is in day-to-day life is way higher than the rest. We need to do an intervention with your grade 9s. We need to show them the Fight the New Drug content, or maybe the gospel tech video, whatever is appropriate in their space, that's going to speak to them. And so that they can actually focus. And so what we've seen, and if there are any educators listening, really what we do is we amplify what we call student voice. So students have a voice. It needs to be listened to. They need to be learning about things that are relevant and responsive to the struggles that they're having. And so we help educators do that, but also we just help parents do that. We help parents listen to their kids and say, guys, what are you struggling with? What's going on? Share your heart with me. I'm going to share mine with yours. And really just, as Christians, there's prayer that parents and kids can do together. And I think that is such a powerful way to be vulnerable together as well. When we just, come before God and just talk about all the stuff that we're struggling with. And what an example. So it's a very needed work. There's a lot of need. There's a lot of need.
Yeah, there is. Well, and as I mentioned, I think there's parents listening right now being like, yeah, that is what we need, because I will say in my experience, so I've been doing this for 3 years specifically on the tech side. And what I've seen is a lot of, I don't want to, all right, I'll just call it what I've seen it be. It's shame-based, right? It's don't make the mistakes, because if you make the mistake, it's the movie Mean Girls is the example I always use, where the PE teacher comes out and is like, don't have sex because you will get pregnant and you will die. And it's like, it's based out of a good spot, right? Like, we don't want kids, having children before, they're prepared in a loving relationship, right? A covenant marriage, because we know how hard that journey can be. And we know the bad, right? Like, we know stuff, but at the end of the day, like, kids are making mistakes actively. So what do we do with the kid who is like, great, well, that ship already sailed for me. So like, now what? And I love that, like, in your conversation, you're not just giving them the right answers, you're equipping those schools and those communities that do care about these kids. So anyway, I get all pumped up every time I hear your work. I guess that's the primary focus. And then the website side, would you walk us through like what that resource is?
So the big thing that we're trying to achieve with the website and all our digital kind of presence is, when we partner with the school to help them find out what the kids are struggling with, we partner with the school's parents. And this solves the second problem I mentioned earlier, is that schools are getting stuck with parenting roles and they're not able to complete the educational role that is their primary mandate. And parents are saying, how come my kid's on their device so much? How come they're not putting it away at night? And how come they're gaming so much? Like, aren't you teaching them about these things in school? And unfortunately for parents, that is, because it's just more on their plate. But they have to understand that digital parenting just has to be a part of what they are doing day to day. So all the free webinars and sponsored webinars that we run on our site, all the parents have access to that, and the replays on that. And the resources on our resource page, where you want a settings guide for TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, or you want to set up a family digital alliance, which I think is very important to have in your home, or just the articles that you can read through, the videos that you can consume. All of that is made available for parents so that they can take on their digital parenting role and do their bit to keep their own kids safer and saner.
And to be in touch, right? Like, to establish that. So you're facilitating that relationship between parents that don't get it and kids that are overwhelmed, and helping that connect, which I guess, I want to run a lot of different directions, but I'm going to keep it focused to these two. First, I want to hear, I guess, your thoughts on, when I hear you talk and the work you're doing, you're not explicitly sharing the gospel, it sounds like, in these schools. These are public institutions. Around South Africa for the most part, other than you are zooming into maybe areas that you can't travel to per se.
Absolutely.
So you're having this, what I had a mentor who would call this tip of the spear evangelism, right? That you're bringing in gospel truth and gospel hope, but you're not sharing the Bible verses that go with it, right? But it is foundational to the way you're doing it. And I guess you're fighting for the weak, those who can't defend themselves, either because they don't know or they just are overwhelmed or don't even believe they're worth fighting for. Could you walk us through how your faith has played a role in getting you into this digital arena? Tell us a little, your testimony, and then how that brought you to this spot.
Man, I feel like this testimonial is going to open up a whole whole series of podcasts, because there's a lot in it. But I'll give you the high level, and then I'll talk about how it impacts me, and when I get to actually talk about the real truth behind, the real power behind my transformation. So as I said at the start, I had this early exposure to pornography. I was very much, and I guess I'll take you through the chapters of my story that I do with kids in a summary version, because I normally speak for about 35 minutes on it. But in summary, and then I'll also include the spiritual aspects of it, which obviously I don't yet share I don't share overtly without an invitation. So I do share when there's a real request, like, hold on, I think there's something more. What really helped you with your porn addiction? So anyway, I jumped the gun. Let me tell you the story. So I was exposed to pornography very young.
By the way, is that Molly?
That's Marley banging on my Taylor. No, it's not a Taylor. It's some form of guitar, but it's a nice one.
Some form of guitar. Like, awesome. Love hearing that.
So Yeah, so I had early exposure to pornography at school. I was what we call in South Africa head boy, head of the boarding house. Imagine like the prom king, head the quarterback, first team water polo, like that guy in the white blazer. Okay, we've got uniforms, so I'm trying to draw parallels here. But
That's
the cool
good.
guy.
We've all read Harry Potter.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
know. We
yeah.
get
You've
the
read Harry
general
Potter.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had the scar. No,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was that kid that was like, this guy's going to go the distance. He's amazing. Everything's laid at his feet. But I had been exposed to pornography at age 9, and I was using porn to manage my emotions all the way through school. Even when I was a Christian, I was head of the Student Christian Association. I was leading worship. But in terms of those of us that have a biblical framework, I was very much that older brother, kind of just religiously pushing through things and being perfect, because I thought that would get me entrance into the banquet, as it was.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I left school, I just lost the plot, man. I started drinking. I started smoking weed. I started, partying way too hard. I got locked up at least 10 times, in the back of police vans, and just a mess. No ability to make decisions and no ability to think things through. It really was a really bad time in my life. A lot of chaos, a lot of addiction, no control over what I was doing, anxiety, depression. And, at the end of this, as I said, I ended up depressed on my parents' couch at around 28, realized that they were never going to ask me to leave because they're nice people, and that I had to do something about it. So I started to get out and trying to do things. I started, and of course, seeing as though I had abandoned God when I was about 18, because he didn't give me a very clear message on the door that said, go this way or go that way, because that's what I just made unrealistic expectations of him because I didn't really know him. Yeah. And so I tried everywhere else. I became a yoga teacher. I went into the Amazon jungle and was drinking a lot of what they call hallucinogenic kind of magic potions, and thinking I could find answers there, and being silent for 10 days, meditating and seeing if I would find some answers there. And I was trying a whole bunch of things to get my life together. And then as I got a little bit older, I met an amazing woman who was the first person in my life to kind of say, here's the boundary. I'm actually not interested in casual. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. That's new. And then just over a period of time, we did a lot of this kind of spiritual searching together. Then eventually her brother was converted came to Christ, and kind of met him in quite a Paul of Damascus Road kind of moment. It wasn't like that for me, which I think is perfect, because I'd been drinking all sorts of things that would make it hard to impress my visual experience. And for me and my wife, it just happened through reading the word. I was trying to find a description of myself in all these things: yoga, meditation, plant medicines is what the New Age calls them, but very powerful psychedelics. And nothing really told me about myself. And then I read in James, a man of two minds is like a wave tossed in the ocean. And I just broke down. I was just like, how can this book describe me so perfectly to myself? And I just started reading more and more. And my wife was reading through the Gospels, and we just saw truth. And then, thank God, he just pulled us in. We had amazing mentors around us in our village that we live in, and started going to church and started praying, started being in fellowship, and we just started seeing those appetites for self-destruction and self-hurt just start to fall away. And yeah, that was seeking purpose. And I started then speaking more about my pornography challenges as I got a grip to it and started exposing it. As we know, these things live in the dark. They live in shame chambers. And as I did that, people started coming to me and saying, I've actually got this problem too, and it turns out that we all have this problem, some version of this problem we all have. Yeah. And then my business partner, whose vision it was to actually start Be in Touch, it's the brand that came to her because her child had a pornography experience, and she found me online. We got together, I did some work in her school, and she said, listen, I've got this vision for this thing called Be in Touch. And I said, that's amazing. I've been struggling by myself trying to make an impact, and I'd love to partner with you and bring this into the world. And so that's what we did. And that was then the fourth chapter is just starting a family. And I think that big piece in starting the family, and it's also a big piece in the Christian faith, is like there are some non-negotiables. There's some rules that are set up about this reality that we can't do anything about.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped me, in my family, starting a family, journey of fertility, which has been a challenge, but it's like hard and fast. Just like I have to mix bottles every day for Molly. I can't get around that with prayer and fasting and affirmations and meditations. And,
Right.
and similarly in our faith as well, there's certain things that it is how it is, because that's how God set it up.
Yeah.
And no use fighting it, because it's just reality.
Right. Dude.
Yes. So that's that in a nutshell, I guess, if I just.
Oh man, that was a pretty big nutshell. I mean, I get so excited hearing that, because we kind of reserved this conversation to have right now. So I'm getting this real time with all of our listeners. But I love, as a middle school teacher for a decade plus, and what I love about your journey is what you talked about, right? Like, man, you have it all together. And it's so easy when we look at our kids to say, well, this kid's buttoned up. Like, this kid's got it together because look, they're athletically focused. They've got a good friend group. They're academically successful. They're dating good kids. Like, they're doing the things. And as parents, we often keep that checkbox like, all right, well, I don't have to be worried about that one. Or as a teacher, right, I'll look at my 35 students and I'll say, all right, well, these 6, I don't have to worry about because they're straight A, they're respectful, they mind their P's and Q's. Yeah. But those 5, I'm really worried about those 5, right? Because they clearly like they've got their issues. And so you're kind of peeling that back for like why, I mean, in my world, why I call this gospel tech, right? Why does the gospel have to be at the center of our technology? Well, because we can't control our kids' hearts. And even when you went all prodigal son and decided to go, right, I'm going to be rebellious because I'm mad or confused or just straight up lost. That
all 3.
But in that space, the answer wasn't my parents needed to step in and fix me, right? You even then you weren't a problem to fix, right? You were still this person who needed the love of God, and that came through because your parents' graciousness, but because of the Lord's mercy, as He
absolutely
brought this woman into your life, and as you were reading the Word, and the Holy Spirit just kind of uppercut you. It sounded like,
for sure.
Just when you read those verses and you're like, wow, that was written for me. Like, that's me. Yeah. And I know that's not okay. And I love that, man, just that picture of not just a kid who rebelled, but a kid who rebelled, and the sweetness of being brought back in, and that God is using those hard seasons that you walked to encourage and to even have empathy for kids who might be in that. And that's super amazing. I love that. I also love at the very end, and I just want to highlight this for families listening, because you're like, even your spiritual walk, 2 things. 1, pornography changed because your heart changed. So you had that, I mean, you said from 9 to late 20s, it sounded like, if I followed that arc correctly. So 2/3 of your life had been pornography, not just as an appetite, but pornography is self-medication at some point.
Absolutely.
And that started to change, not because you got the right plan or you got the right other medication to replace it, but that God started killing the appetite. You said you brought it to the light, right? I think you used the phrase shame chamber as where it works, which is very, like, in my life, that makes sense, right? Whether it's pornography or whatever it is for us, right? We make excuses and then we hide it. And that the gospel says, no, we bring it out and we expose it to the light of the gospel and we confess it. And that process helps us kill it. I hope our listeners are hearing that, and parents, what I want us to hear from that, and Josh's story is, as we look at our kids and we start to have these conversations, we start to be in touch with what's going on in their lives. A lot of times we don't want to hear it, right? We don't want to know. We want to look at the checklist and we want to think that kid's fine. They're pretty, right? They're academically intelligent, they're motivated. They've got it all made. Like, I don't want to know about their addictions or their issues or their depression or their suicidal ideations or their whatever, their anger. Like, I don't want to do that, partly because we think it reflects on us and partly because we just don't want the space. But that's what the gospel is here for, is to set our kids free from that. And so I loved that, Josh. Man,
I think just to speak into that as well, the gospel sets us free because we have such a clear route to our Father that comes through our contrite heart, that he's not looking for big sacrifices and all of that.
Yeah.
He just wants that heart that realizes it's in need of him. But I think what parents can do, especially parents that are in a faith-based home, they can model that. Admitting that nobody's perfect, admitting that everyone's got relative sin or relative stuff that they're dealing with. And I think including your children age appropriately in prayers that you make, confessions that you make, and this is a really interesting little piece of science, that they found that a child's ability to self-regulate, and if we combine science with Christianity, self-regulate would be reflect, hold on, I need to take this to the Lord. Like I need to, and so the child's ability to do that is more influenced by the way that the parents relate, in terms of them owning their stuff and talking about their stuff and not blaming each other and sticking to the agreements that they've made, than any one kind of other influence in their lives. So I think families that pray together, what a wonderful opportunity to just put the focus on God and not on you and me and how we're fighting. And I never got to experience that as a child in my family, where my parents, especially my dad, would like pray to God on my behalf. Just imagine how powerful that is. Like, Lord, just help my son, help him to know how much you love him, how much you have in store for him, and that it's okay for him to talk about his troubles. And I just think the idea of prayer, I mean, I've got a background in psychology and coaching, which was very secular in that training. And it's just so hilarious because I look back at the Bible and the systemic framework of Christianity, and I'm just like, there's so many tools of coaching, counseling, mediation, intervention, intercession. I mean, the words are in there that underpin. I mean, this is the original book. I mean, this is the original everything.
So like, it actually still checks out. Like,
everything else is like a derivative, and so I think, just to speak into that, because it is something that's on my heart a lot, around speaking the gospel in schools. And just to give your listeners some idea of the context of South Africa, we've got 11 official languages. We've got just so many cultures and worldviews in our space that if I'm going to go in and connect with kids, it generally is from this kind of science-based, my story is, as opposed to what your story is or what your story should be. And then generally I have a few opportunities when kids are like, listen, what was the single biggest thing that made a difference? And then I can be prayer. And it was breaking down and praying over my life and getting others to do the same, or whatever it is that helped me with the specific problem that they're asking about.
Man. Yeah. And that is, thank you. I love, that clarity you bring back to how we can do it. Cause that would be my next question is, I'm listening to this as a parent. I may or may not have a kid who's struggling with something right now. And I will kind of pivot us in a moment to more specifics, like, hey, let's talk tech. And like, how do we get in touch with our kids? But starting just from that place of gospel, I love the Lord. And like, that's an active part of my walk. I've got kiddos. They may or may not be struggling, because on our end, we use this phrase called a reset for an acronym of like, hey, is my kid's tech a problem? Well, we look at relationships and responsibilities. We look at their emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time. And we use those as kind of the entry point of like, that's going to be the pinch point. I go and talk to my kid. Hey, child, I love you. And I've noticed when you listen to this, watch this, play this, here's what shifts in an unhealthy direction that I'm concerned about as your parent. What, I guess, would you say are those entry points when it comes to then gospel, like loving our kids? Like, how can we make that? You mentioned pray together, which praying and confessing, I made a note because I was like, I don't do that. I pray with my kids, but I don't expose my sin in front of them. And you mentioned age appropriate, like obviously.
They got to know you got things under control. They're like, is the captain, has he got this? Has he got this? Is
this going to be okay?
Lord, help me with my bills. I can't pay for the month's rent, and we're going to lose the house, Lord. Like, Dad, are you serious about that stuff?
Is that our house we're talking about?
Are you talking about our house? Like my toys? You want to sell my toys? So but there is modeling that we can do, and I've heard other commentators. I mean, and listen, I gotta say that my child is 13 months old, so I'm not raising tweens or teens, and I haven't been a Christian dad raising a family. So I just want to be clear about that. I've got ideas, but if your life is anything like mine, if I can get through the day, I'm winning. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But I can pass on knowledge that I've kind of intuitively just felt like this makes sense. And, some of them are acknowledging our own sin to our kids. And if we mess up, affording them the respect of apologizing to them, and for them to see that modeling and that humbling. And I think, so much of what I experienced as being unsettling as in my time away from the Lord was hierarchy, was not being sure where on the hierarchy. And I was deluded in this kind of, you go into the New Age spirituality, basically I'm God, right? That the self is God. And so everything that I see and interact with is a reflection of me. It's all about me. It's all about how I'm revealing myself, which just gets really confusing because it's hard to prioritize things, interpret things. And I think in a Christian home where you've got this clear hierarchy of, God is so much farther above us that we're all submitted to him. And then, that submission plays out in the family, as the Bible kind of tells us that it should. But when your child has the experience of you submitting to God and coming to them and being like, guys, I shouted at you the other day and I want to ask you to forgive me. It's super powerful for a kid to be like, whoa, why do you need my forgiveness? And be like, well, listen, I've spoken to God about this because I asked him for forgiveness and he's forgiven me, but I also want you to know that I'm sorry. And that's not the way that I'd like to be. So I think that practical prayer life and again, I can speak from what I wish my parents did, because my mom was a Christian for a long time in our family. We went to church, but it was never like, I never saw them praying through stuff and kind of like grappling with the word and being like, wow, let's look at this word and study it. And what is this telling us about our family and our life and our technology? So I think showing a practical Christianity is really useful for helping kids, because kids these days are asking questions like, is this valuable? Like, is this even important in my life? Like, I don't have time to waste. There's so much information out there. Like, I just don't have the time to just do this just because you say. And I can't just go. And especially when kids are like, you guys don't actually understand anything about the world. You're old. You still use Facebook. Like, you're going to tell me about what I need to know about my life when I'm 14, 15, 16. But if they're seeing value in what you're doing and you're like, guys, let's look at this situation let's take something nice and controversial. Everyone will prick the ears up. Mask mandates or vaccination, something that they're grappling with day to day in school, and be like, guys, what do you think about this? What do the scriptures say about this? How do we make this into something that our worldview, our faith can help us through, as opposed to just, the blind, here are the rules and just keep walking and keep getting those stars.
Don't ask questions. Don't step out of line.
Don't ask questions. Don't step out of line. Like, I only discovered apologetics as a 30-something-year-old, like I finally got to engage my rational brain on why I have a hope and a reliance on my faith, So I think, meeting kids where they're at, I think is super important.
Yeah, I think I love that. That just what you said of meeting kids where they're at. So starting with modeling of humility and repentance, right? Of going, I did grow with that model, and that absolutely stuck with me. I did not have angry parents, but to have a parent even once, like I can vividly remember I got in trouble. And the discipline for me getting in trouble started with my dad apologizing for his handling. I didn't not get in trouble, still did. But that was very unsettling. Being like, I don't know. I forgive you, I guess. And but just that model of like, it didn't destroy my dad's authority in the home. It didn't ruin my respect for him. Like at no point did that. And it modeled this idea of like, now when I read scripture and I see Jesus leading and yet serving, like I have at least a hint of what that can look like, because I've now at least witnessed, not just heard about, but I've witnessed a form of leadership that isn't just top down, like this least is the greatest thing is a thing, right? And I want to double down, parents, what Josh mentioned of kids are asking, and they're asking earlier than ever, is this valuable? Is this real? Does it matter? And does it matter in my life in 2022, right? Or in this digital world? They're asking those, and a lot of times we can be intimidated by kids asking those. They're going to ask that in the realm of gender. They're going to ask that in the realm of sex. They're going to ask that in the realm of alcohol. They're going to ask it and even act on it. But those are questions that they want answers for. And we know that the answers aren't in those places. We know that the answer is in the identity God has for them. So rather than just freaking out that they asked the question, right? Going, hey, mom and dad, gender question, right? Like rather than panicking because they have the question, we need to come into the heart of that and be like, well, what does God say about that? And how does this matter? Because Jesus came to set us free. Like that was Jesus's point. God was saving people in the Old Testament. Go read Psalm 65. David talks a lot about how God is saving everyone who calls on his name. This new thing is he's now indwelling us, right? The Holy Spirit doesn't just rest on people now. Now the Holy Spirit takes up residence and changes hearts of stone into hearts of flesh. And that's what we want to see for our kids. And they're going to witness it with us first. And that, I guess, is my big heart in doing this. And Josh, and just hearing your story, man, is with the gospel, we can love and be present in situations that we can't even fathom. And that we don't have, like, apologetics are awesome, which are amazing. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up with a Christopher Hitchens, who isn't an atheist, right? He was an anti-theist. So when asked, what would convince you that there's a God? He literally said, like, I could meet God, understand that is God, and I would still, like Christopher Hitchens said, I would still walk away. Like, I'm not an atheist. I don't believe there's not a God. I don't like God. And I've made my entire life making sure other people don't like him either. And they're like, well, that's different, right? Like those are conversations that we need to have, because we need our kids to get to the spot to go, well, are you asking questions so you can learn, or are you actually just running? And it's important to diagnose that because those have different solutions. And so I love, man, that approach is encouraging. Parents, I hope you're hearing this thinking, I can ask that next question. I can be curious about my kid's life. And I can love them because of the love I've been given. That's huge. Man. All right. There's a lot of things. I'll just ask this. Who's an apologist that you've been enjoying?
Before I go there, I want to just close with the be curious with your kids.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have the answers. If you can go on a journey with them of discovering that answer together, that means you're in the same boat, pointing in the same direction. They're not looking to you for all these answers. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be curious enough to engage them and go on that journey together to bring them to that solution that makes sense, that adds value to your life. So I think the main apologist that I've been following is also just such a wonderful cautionary tale of the human heart, because I did my studies with the Ravi Zacharias Institute before all of the stuff came out about him. And I think it's just, again, so important that we never put that person, and make sure that your kids don't put you on that pedestal, that it's not Ravi that is of value. It's not you as parents. It's, as we've just discussed, it's the gospel. It's the truth of this gift of life that we have. So that was who I studied with, but I also follow quite a few guys as well. Their names all evade me now to make me suitably humbled in this moment.
That's fair. That's fair.
I like there's quite a few young apologists that I love, who are like, they're like environmental activists, and they're like kind of, I don't want to say normal people, but normal people. And so
they're not ivory tower folk. They're
like trying to save penguins, and some people are like, but the tribulation's coming. Why are you saving the penguins? Like, well, there's some stuff going on, so they can unpack that. But it's been wonderful.
Relevant, right? I mean, you'll see parents. I'm not telling you to let your kids on this, but TikTok has like a major groundswell of apologists and people sharing the gospel in very clear and concise ways. And it is interesting to watch, because I mean, TikTok is the tale of two cities when it comes to content.
What's on there?
And it is very much the best and the worst of all the time. So I'm not saying like, let your kid on there. There's good Bible content. I'm saying there are people intentionally going there with the gospel.
And we got to go where the lost are, right? It's
and they're there.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
And they're there. They are there.
They are there.
And then some.
Let me then bring this to the real practical. I just want to run through some tech kind of questions, get your thoughts on these, because this is an area that you have a bunch of expertise, and I'd love to hear our audience to hear your thoughts on this. Just one, when you go out and you work with these families and you're helping them be in touch, kids be in touch with themselves and their situations and their realities, parents in touch with their kids and the tech realities of their world, what's the number one question parents ask you?
How much screen time is too much? And it's the wrong question to ask, because it's not so much about how much time, it's what are they doing?
Yeah.
Because we can't simply just say 1 hour, because that means you don't understand the complexity of this issue. Is it 1 hour on TikTok looking at that, spectrum of what we've just discussed of really terrible content? Is it on YouTube figuring out how to cook an amazing waffle? Is it on, the Protect Young Eyes curriculum, learning about how to be safe online? So it's not as simple as here's your time limit. It has to come with more complexity than that. Conversations, critical thinking, values of the family. So that's probably the biggest question we get, but it's a flag for me that there's an oversimplification of a problem.
And what's the easiest way for us to fix that oversimplification?
Get curious. Get curious.
Okay.
The kids, ask them better questions. A great one is, can you teach me? Can you teach me how TikTok works? Can you teach me why you want to play games so much? Can you teach me how to change the settings on Netflix? Can you teach me why you like Roblox so much? Can you teach me why Microsoft Education Edition, Minecraft Education Edition isn't what you want to be playing? I think engaging them and then having, and again, this is so much easier in a Christian home because the idea of consequences is very clear.
Yeah.
And just there's no room for wiggling around those consequences. And so if you have a family digital alliance in your home where you're clear about how tech is used and not used, and that for every obedient action comes more freedom, which we know from our faith, it can really help kids get to grips with what is definitely a magnet. Like, they're being pulled into these devices, and the one who roams around like a roaring lion is in your pocket, and you've got to be fighting that. Otherwise, it's winning. So it's which then I want to follow that up with, if you could get every parent to do just one thing, right? And maybe it's that, maybe it's just be curious, but I guess I'm thinking like a practical application. What one thing would you have them do? Get your kids' devices out of their bedrooms tonight.
Okay.
We know that over 80% of cyberbullying happens in evenings and late at night. We know that about 60% of 10-year-olds have phones, and that over 60% of those phones have no parental filters at all. So you've got children with access to the unfiltered internet in their bedrooms at night, and that is where a lot of harm happens. Social, stranger contact, social media, cyberbullying. Get those devices out of bedrooms. Number one.
Okay.
Easy win.
Easy win. And we can do it today, right? And have that conversation now, because when the kid panics, be like, let's be curious about this. Like, why does this destroy your life? Why do you believe that I'm like doing this?
What's that? You need a torch? Oh, look, I've got you a torch. Oh, you need an alarm clock? Oh, look at this. This one's got an LED and it's got a mister on it.
Yes, that's amazing. Exactly right. And none of us need $1,000 alarm clock. I'm on board with that. And I've got like 6 more, but I want to keep this concise. So let me just pick one of these. All right, let's go positive. One piece of tech every family should have. Is there
good question. Actually, I was reading through this question. I was like, my child is 13 months old. How relevant is what I love? The first thing that came to mind was like a camera, I think a camera is a great one. Making videos with your kids is super fun. It can be really, I've spoken to a lot of parents that have a lot of fun doing that, and getting the kids to kind of teach them how some of these camera filters work and having a laugh around it. I mean, there are some great solutions like Loam, which is basically like a child scheduling tasks, all of the check all your tasks, that's done through an iPad, or, you can use tech to do these kinds of things. But I would say anything that brings you together. So what we find is that kids get the most benefit, even with reading. When they read with mom and dad, it's not the reading that's really helping the child develop. It's the moments where mom turns to child or dad turns to child and says, why did the duck, steal the mouse's ribbon?
Right.
And then she'd be like, well, maybe it's because the mouse, he put the bucket with the, and they're thinking about it. So if you're going to watch content, so the most important piece of tech in your home is the piece of tech that you're sharing with your child.
Yeah.
That you're not just handing over and they're going to the back room, I'll see you in an hour. Go in there and play the game with them. I love Chris McKenna's line that I use it so much. When thumbs are moving, tongues are waggling. I spend my best time with my niece who lives in Canada is playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
I can sit for an hour chatting about how's school, what are you up to? I'm over here and, I'm building a house out of rock, and, we kind of have this shared experience. So just spending time with your child, regardless of the tech, whether you're learning to fly a drone or who knows, virtual reality. I mean, there's so much tech out there, but I'd say whatever piece of tech it is, as long as you're sharing it with your child, is valuable.
Oh, snap. I love that, right? The best piece of tech is the tech you're sharing with your kid. And parents, I think that is an awesome spot for us to wrap up this conversation, because it lets us be curious. It lets us be humble. It lets us keep the gospel at the center, because we're going where our kids are. We're acknowledging the value they have with the interests and passions God's give them, without simply accepting them all at face value. Jesus coming in the body of a man, of pouring out his godhood and putting on humanity like a cloak, did not mean he said, this is the great final status, I'm going to leave you all in. That's not why he came, right? He came here to redeem us. And we get to do the same with our kids, right? Like, I'm entering your world, not because I think all this is fine, but because I know it's not. And I love you. And I don't want to just leave you in this alone to find your own way out. Like, we get to go there and fight with them and for them. And I think that's awesome, Josh. Thank you. Man. All right. Where can people find more of your resources and get in touch with you?
Right on. So it's Be In Touch. That's BEINTOUCH.org. .za. So there's a .za on the end there, which just means it's a .org in South Africa.
In America, that's ZA.
ZA
for the ZA. I don't know why we do Z and the rest of the world does Z. I'm sorry. So anyway, ZA folks.
Yeah. So beinTouch.org.za, and there's a bunch of free webinars. We've got at least 3 per month on average. That you guys can sign up with. Some of them are paid if you want to spend a bit more time and get a bit more content and help. But there's definitely enough to get you going on our resource page and our webinar page. And you can join our newsletter, send you updates. It'd be great to be in touch with you.
That is fantastic. And then, are you on social media? I'm actually asking you this spontaneously. All right. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So it's exactly the same, beinTouch.org.za on Instagram and Facebook. And those are the only kind of 2 platforms that we're on.
Okay.
My business partner does an amazing job of running those and keeping people inspired on them because of my history. And this is just something to kind of close with as well, is that when I talk to the kids, some of them look at me and be like, okay, well, you've come through all this stuff, you've had all this fun, you're still okay. Doesn't that make it okay for me? And then I have to say, listen, there are consequences, and we know this. There are consequences for our actions. And one of the consequences is that I can't really be on social media that much, because I'm just no good at it. My distraction filters are not very good because of my upbringing. So but there's great content there. Go check it out.
Yeah. Which I'll take this moment to be like, parents, this is what we're talking about when we talk about we cut off and gouge out those things that draw us away from the Lord, and we trust him, even though Josh's entire job is internet based, right? Some of those things aren't worth it. Like the convenience and the growth opportunity isn't worth things that would distract him from the Lord. And so thank you for sharing that as a little cherry on top of this whole conversation. Josh, thank you for your work. Thank you for being out there fighting for families. And I'm excited to see the way the Lord continues to use you. And as you get to share your testimony and your passion for seeing young people and parents be in touch with one another and really reach their full potential in that way. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Bye.
And thank you all for being a part of this conversation today. I hope you were encouraged by it. I hope that you heard practical things you can begin doing, like getting that drool tech specifically out of your kid's bedroom today. You can start with a healthy conversation with some curiosity about what your kids are into and why they're into it, and begin those really important conversations that establish rapport and that parental ethos that allows you to be the professional in their life, but more importantly, that sees them as valuable and that really expresses the truth of the gospel in relationship to your own kiddos. Man, I hope that happens and that you can see how that can happen in your life. I hope you check out Be in Touch. Again, that's beintouch.org.za or ZA, as it's said everywhere else on the planet. You can reach out to me. Again, if there's people you want me to interview that you think these conversations would be cool to have because they're influential in your life, or you love the message they have as it relates to technology, the gospel, raising up our kiddos, you can reach out to me directly, nathan@gospeltech.net, and you can join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.